episode 025.
I was trying to save my siblings. I was trying to save some friends. And that led to a whole lot of pain in my life that stopped me from growing, that stopped me from living out my purpose.
Welcome to SocTalks.com, where inspiring authors, speakers, and masterminds share their stories with you. Let their stories ignite your passion, accelerate you on your path, and annihilate your limiting beliefs. Now, here's your host for SocTalks.com, Socrates Zayas.
Boom! So let's get started. Today on SocTalks, we have an amazing superhero of a guest. She survived severe anorexia at the age of 15, failed at a suicide attempt at the age of 17. She was locked up in a mental institution, and that's a true story. Dropped out of high school. At 16, the age of 16, she met her husband on a short trip to the United States. At 17, engaged. At 18, she moved to the United States from Germany. Ooh, wow. Take a deep breath there. She comes to the United States. She doesn't know anyone. She doesn't speak the language. Still severely ill with her eating disorder. She's had typical struggles as an immigrant, the typical language, education, culture. But at 19, things started to click. Things started to change for her because she found network marketing as an industry in a company called Tupperware. Since then, she's been in a few companies, and her last one for 10 years. This uneducated, delicate, but fierce woman has earned upward of $1.2 million. Now, I'm not saying that to impress you, but to impress upon you that you can start from humble beginnings and end up where this woman is today. Now, who is the successful home-based superhero? Wife, mother of 2 biological children, 2 adopted teens, and a foster daughter, who, by the way, and I should say this, by the way, has decided to venture professionally into coaching, which she's been doing for 7 years on the side as pro bono. But she sees a demand to help people. And she needs to help people. She's driven to help people. This woman's name is Irma Maspin. Enough of me blowing smoke. I'll let her tell you more about her. Irma, are you ready to ignite passions, accelerate journeys, and annihilate limiting beliefs?
Boom, Socrates. Yes.
I love it. Okay, listen, go ahead. Fill in the blanks for me. Who is the real Irma Maspin?
Well, thanks first and foremost for having me as a guest here today. It is definitely an honor to just come and share a little bit about who I am and the last 38 years of my life, which sometimes I feel like I've lived 90 years. And people tell me this all the time when they follow my story and my journey. And so I'm going to try to condense it to really say, who am I? Well, that's a good question because many years I didn't know who I am. I was born into a very religious home back home in Germany. I was definitely one that was confused as a child because we lived 2 lives. In the church and at home, there was many things that you rather not want to talk about. I was exposed to pornography as a young child. My father, who was a preacher at the time, but also living a double life. So at a young age, I was very confused. Who am I? Who am I supposed to be? How am I supposed to act? And I learned to live roles, which is very dangerous because you really never know who you are if you're learning to live certain roles in life. Right. Which then led into struggles with anorexia because I was seeing my family fall apart. And, any addiction really, whether you're dealing with alcohol addiction and drug addiction or anorexia or pornography, any of these addictions, really what you're trying to do is control something in your life that's not controllable. And I fell into an eating disorder at a very young age, and it really almost killed me. You already shared a little bit about that. Landed me in a mental institution after trying to commit suicide because I didn't know who I am. I was lost and I was hurting. I think I was really intuitive to help people. I wanted to save my family's life. I wanted to save my parents, and I couldn't. And so that's really kind of like a little bit more about my past. Who am I today? I think when I really surrendered to the Lord at about 2006, I remember having gone through several direct selling businesses. I started with Tupperware, into Mary Kay, into Creative Memories, and wanting to make a difference for others, but also wanting to make a difference for our life financially. We had our 2 young children. It was my dream to be mom. That's all I ever wanted. and I was homeschooling my children. And so I thought, hey, if I just work from home and, go out there and do really well in selling products and booking parties, and if I just do what everyone tells me to do, I'm going to make it. So I was very coachable. I was a hard worker. I believed in the American opportunity to work really, really hard, never asking for a handout. But it didn't happen because at the time, the companies I was with, it was like the train had gone. I was not part of that catching flight of the successful people. And so I was trailing behind constantly. Yet I was really kind of like the poster child of success for some of these companies. I started to speak and earn really great awards and trips and recognition. And in that time frame, it fueled something in me that I needed. However, it wasn't lasting. And anyone that has experienced success, and it's not really more than just that immediate success. It's not deeper filling your soul. You know what I'm talking about. You come home and you feel empty. Well, I remember that moment. I will never, ever forget it. This is probably one of the most turning points in my life. Knowing the scripture, knowing church, knowing religion, wondering if it's all real. Never in my life did I question it up until that point. It was 2006. I remember standing in my kitchen. I will never forget it. On the left, I viewed my husband in the garden. Our son was mowing the lawn. My daughter was playing with her dolls in her room. And I remember just seeing everything vividly. And I stood there in the kitchen and tears began to go down my cheeks. And I felt like as if I was the thinnest piece of glass on planet Earth. And I thought, I'm debt free. I paid off our debt. We accomplished things. I've been on stage. I've been recognized. People are recognizing who Irma is. Why on earth do I feel like I'm about to crumble? Why do I feel so empty in my life? What is going on? And I remember that moment I needed to make a decision. So I went backwards. I actually walked backwards into my bedroom, locked the door. I walked into my closet, locked the door. And I had a carpet moment with the Lord. I mean, flat on my face, tears streaming, never in my life questioned the authority of God, who he really was. But I did that day. I became very, very personal and very daring. And I said those daring words, I don't know if you're real, but if you are, begin to show up in my life. Show me who I am supposed to be. Let me know what I'm created for. I got to know my purpose in life because I cannot live like this. I began to understand why Hollywood stars commit suicide, why some of the biggest people are on antidepressants. And I realized there isn't enough success until you discover your purpose. Well, that moment defined my life. I don't know if it was 5 minutes, and I don't know if it was 5 hours. I couldn't tell you. But I remember it was a turning point in my life. I remember getting up. I think I had so much dust and tears on my face because I was literally, like I said, it was my carpet moment. And I walked out of my closet and I decided if I really want to know if he's real, if the God Almighty who created the universe is real, then I got to find him where he left clues, which was the scriptures, the Bible. And I know maybe some of you are listening here today and you're disagreeing with my faith, but that's okay. I'm sharing my story here. And I decided, you know what? I'm not going to just do my quiet time like I used to, but I'm going to really begin to search, what am I made for? Why am I here? And so I did. I began to every single day, before the day started, I got on my knees. I began to pray for purpose. I began to ask the Lord to reveal who I was made for. And then I began to read the scriptures. And I will tell you something. All of my life, I thought I knew the Bible. Things started to come alive that I had never seen before. And I began to hear a message. You don't have because you don't ask. And I was brought to the book of Proverbs, which was wisdom. And I began to realize if I want to make a difference in the lives around me, which I begin to feel that's what I was created for, to enhance lives, to change lives, I've got to have the wisdom from Yahweh Almighty, from God Almighty. So I did. I became very daring. And I said, you know what? I will never be guilty of not having because I don't ask, because from this point on, I will ask. And that's where my journey began. That's where my life began to transform, literally, physically, emotionally. A year after that, I was set free of anorexia. Like that, boom, literally in a moment of just surrendering, saying, I'm done with it. I don't want to carry this cross anymore. I am surrendering it. And little by little by little, he began to show me things that I had to then surrender. It wasn't like him taking it from me, but it was becoming apparent, hey, if you hang on to this, you can change lives. And so since then, I discovered my purpose. My purpose is to empower people, to help them discover what they were made for, what on earth were they created for, walking through that with them. And I started coaching through Bible studies and marriage classes and parenting and, little things here and there. And it's been a really amazing journey of really, truly touching lives. That is my mission.
Boom. I tell you, so much protein in that you said and you shared with us. My goodness, there was a second there I was breathless, listening to you speak. And unfortunately, our listeners can't see you. I can. And if you guys see this beautiful smile and this angel in front of me, behind her is a ton of books, which in itself is a success clue, right? Because you have to read and you have to educate your mind. This is not a person who only swims in the book, the good book, right, in the Bible, but also is constantly filling her mind with other things. The biggest book that's behind her right now that I see says "Decide, Commit, and Succeed." So that's a huge thing for me to share with you guys right now. So anyway, I'm not sure, Emma, if you understand what SocTalks is all about. But SocTalks is about guest stories. Okay, so I feel personally that stories are what create rapport with people, and they resonate best with them. And I think that's what gets them to move immediately into action. Okay, so Emma, if you would. And I know you've already given us a huge story here, but if you would, could you share with us a failure story, a worst moment in your life, in your journey?
Oh gosh, that's a good one, because one of the things that I try to coach people on is never calling yourself a failure or a success. It's very dangerous. Both of them are very dangerous, because the minute you begin to put a title on yourself, and you call yourself something besides really who you are, you lose the opportunity of growth in both ways. And I've done both of those. I've called myself a failure, called myself a success, and boom, right there, stop of growth. So what I've learned is to really understand we're passing through. We're passing through failure and we're passing through success. One of my greatest failures, I would say, is very personal, and I'm going to try to tell you guys this without being too emotional about it. And that is 2012. 2012, my family had the opportunity to move to Germany, back to my home country, which was my biggest dream. I left when I was 18, left my family behind. My sister and I, we were the closest that, two kids grow up, walked through a lot. My brothers were there, my mom, everyone was there. And the company that I'm with right now, they were opening up a branch in Germany. Now, they didn't send us. It was a personal decision that we could have made. And me and then two other executive directors decided to pack up our entire belongings. We sold our house. It was a huge, huge decision. Our children were 13 and 15 at the time. So imagine that, picking them up and moving them. And my husband, my amazing husband, who has supported me through everything, quit his job and decided to go on this adventure with us. Now, he doesn't speak the language. He struggles with self-belief and has a lot of self-doubt, and that's where my biggest failure came in. I had so much drive to fulfilling my dream to live with my family again that I didn't recognize the hurt that was coming out of my husband. And I neglected him, and I neglected his need for the greater purpose of helping others. And this is one of my biggest lessons that I would want to pass on to someone. Sometimes when we work in network marketing, MLM, whatever it is, we get so intertwined with the mission of helping others. And yet sometimes we're hurting the ones that are the closest to us because we're so driven. And we don't stop and think, can this possibly also have a negative effect to our family? And me walking straight on into this opportunity and loving this idea of helping the people of Germany and helping my sister succeed and my family. And all of a sudden I was pulled in 1,000 different directions and I was thriving. I am a doer. I mean, you give me a task, I go for it. My greatest failure was recognizing that my husband was literally dying next to me. And that almost led to divorce.
Wow.
To the point where I actually filed for divorce, believe it or not. A person that believes in marriage like no one else. And yet, God, Yahweh came around and saved us in a mighty, mighty way. But if I would have to say one thing I regret in my life was letting it go as far as I did because I hurt the person I loved the most.
Wow. Well, that's powerful. Super powerful. So now, I magically create a time machine for you. Assuming that you won't go back and disrupt any time continuum instances, you go back and you're able to speak to yourself. What would you tell the young you at any point in your life? Doesn't need to be with this particular failure story, but at any point in your life, maybe even back at 16, maybe even younger, what would you tell to yourself that would help you avoid the hurdles and the pitfalls that you've had in your life?
Pretty easy because I do self-examination all the time. I would probably say, don't ever believe that you have the power to change someone. That can only come from the maker of who created human life, God, Yahweh himself. But live your life so that you will inspire others to wanting to change themselves. My greatest pitfall was I was trying to be a savior to many people in my young life. I was trying to save my parents. I was trying to save my siblings. I was trying to save some friends. And that led to a whole lot of pain in my life that stopped me from growing, that stopped me from living out my purpose. So rather than, Irma, save people, you cannot be someone's savior. Live out your greatest purpose, so that with the influence that you're creating and the sphere around you will have the ripple effect of you living out your greatest purpose. So as they are now tapping into your circle, that they will be inspired enough that they will want to change for themselves. The greatest lesson I would teach someone, you cannot save anyone. However, you can make changes within you, live out your purpose so that you will inspire others to become the greatest themselves that they can possibly be.
Like Gandhi would say, right? He would say, be the change that you want in the world.
Right.
Well, very well done. Very well done. So let's flip the script and have you tell us a story about your one aha moment. One that's going to resonate with the Sock Talk listeners. Can you tell us that story?
I would say the first thing that comes to my mind, and I'm going with it, is discovering the 5 love languages.
Repeat that. The what?
Discovering the 5 love languages. That was probably one of my greatest aha moments in life. Discovering the way that we were created to love and to receive love is different from every other human being. And that was an aha moment that has created ripple effects in my life. Recognizing my own love language, which is words of affirmation and gift giving, very different than my husband's, which is quality time and acts of service. Very different from both of my biological children. When I discovered, this is really one of my greatest aha moments, that you have to study people and get to know them and ask enough questions to understand how they need to be loved. You can influence their life like no other way. The greatest book I've ever read, and I recommend every single person to read it, which is The 5 Love Languages. Because at that point, you gain a lot of power because you can try to give the way that you think someone is needing to be loved. But if they don't speak that language, just like I can't tell you in French how much I love you if you don't speak the language. Communication in general is so huge. But beyond the verbal, which is the love languages, to understand them, to live it, and to master them will change your life.
The 5 levels of love languages. Wow,
Yep.
I've got to get that book. I haven't heard that book.
You haven't read it?
I haven't read it. And
it will change your life. It will change your life.
I got to get it because I've got beautiful children that I really want to be and impact their lives, and anything like that is going to help me do that. So absolutely, I just wrote it down. Okay, let's do the same as we did with the failure story. Let's talk about the lessons and how you would want to impact the listeners with that. Okay, so maybe put together a three-step call to action for the listener so that they can ignite their passion, accelerate them on a path, and annihilate a limiting belief.
Well, I think the first thing is you've got to stop and pause life and really make a commitment to discover who you are. If you fail that first step to really know who you are, you will constantly try to emulate people. You will try to follow into their footstep, and maybe that's just not who you are. I remember when I was trying to figure out who I am in my current business, and I was listening to great success stories. And one of those success stories was a person that would go to the gym. It was all about finding contacts and building your contact list. And so I thought, you know what? If I go to the gym and I'm there every day and I go into these classes, I'm going to be as successful as this person that I was listening on stage. And I did. And I was the biggest fraud in that gym. I hated it. I don't like working out. I'm thin. People think I work out, but I only do it really to help my heart and to be healthy, but I hate it. And I was a total fraud and I was a fake. And you can guess how many contacts I made. 0. Right? And so then I really disliked what I did because I thought, you know what? I'm a failure. Why is she so successful at the gym and I'm not? And it was the moment when I realized I had to go back to that carpet moment of who am I? And that changes with the seasons that you're in.
Yes.
And in that moment, I was in the adoption world. I was actually very active in the adoption world. This was last year. And so I realized, you know what? I can't impact people in the gym because I don't break down protein and BCCAs and all that. That's just not my passion. So why am I trying to be someone that I'm not? Yet all of a sudden I realized there's so many families in the adoption world that need an income, that need to fundraise. What if I just reached out to them and just said, hey, this is what I'm doing. I'd love to share with you. If it makes sense to you, come and join me. I'd love to help you. Boom. Doubled my income that year. Why? Because I discovered who I am again and the life purpose I was in that moment. So that's my first thing. Discover who you are and don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to figure out who you are. You will always operate in the most successful way when you are in your sweet spot, which is understanding who you are. Figure out what your passions are. And then the next thing is invest into yourself every single day. If you're not reading at least 15 minutes a day on something that will sharpen your skills, leadership books from brilliant minds that have come before us, that have left clues, then you're missing out. You're absolutely missing out. So discover who you are. Figure out what your passions are. Sharpen the skill by reading at least 15 minutes a day. And then one of the big things is write out goals. I fought it for 9 years. I did not write down goals. I was not a fan of it. I was afraid of failing on writing it out. And what if I don't succeed at it? And so last year I made a change.
5 minutes. Wait a second.
I began to write it out on paper on purpose every single month. And then I broke it down into weekly steps, and then I did it on daily steps. And then the last thing, and this is so crucial, you have to be accountable. You have to have an accountability partner. If you don't have that, you will most likely fail. So what I did in my business, I created a daily accountability group. First thing in the morning, 8:30, everyone that's working and it's in the trenches, they're logging in and they're coming on and they're sharing 24 hours worth of activity. 24 hours, that's all I care about. And what are you committing to for the next 24 hours? It's a 2-day cycle. That's it. So we're not focusing on 6 years worth of failure or on success from 6 months ago. We're in the now, and we're moving forward in a 24-hour circle. So let's repeat. Discover who you are. Figure out your passion. Live in that sweet spot, because that's where you're going to find your contacts. Then invest into yourself. Read at least 15 minutes a day. Be accountable and write out goals. Those are the things, if you apply them to your life every single day. And one more thing, make sure you rest 1 day a week. That's one thing that I've learned from the scriptures. I just happen to believe that Sabbath is the day, and you can decide that for yourself. Changed my life completely when I decided that I'm going to work 6 days my heart out, and 1 day on the seventh day, I'm going to rest, because your spirit, your mind, your body, your soul, you've got to rest. And when you do that, you will be way more productive in 6 days than when you do 24/7.
Well, if it's good enough for the big man, it's got to be good enough for us, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, Irma, that's it. I mean, we're into the SocTalks showdown. This is where I shoot some random questions at you, and you shoot back the first thing that pops up into your mind. But first, and there's always a but, okay, but first, you can find my friend and colleague on the usual suspect media places, but best way for them to get a hold of you is what?
Social media. Facebook.
So the best place to get a hold of her is just social media. Find her on Facebook at Irma Mospan. So you can just go at IRMAMOSPAN, and she'll pop up with her smiley face. You can. She does a lot of lives, so you get to see her there and learn some stuff from her specifically. Right? Did I get that right, Irma?
Yes, sir. You got that right.
So are you ready for the showdown, my dear?
Yes.
All right. So here we go. This is gonna be the fun part. Best advice you ever received?
Live in the moment.
Do you have a mentor?
Yes.
Why?
I believe everyone needs one.
Why?
Well, I would say definitely it keeps you accountable, it keeps you focused, and it also keeps you on the straight and narrow path. I have two, I would call them mentors, partners, people I talk to every day, and we've made a commitment to hold each other accountable, as well as being straightforward and honest, especially if we're wandering off.
Good. What do you do the first 80 minutes of your day?
Oh, that's easy. It's very, very structured. I get up, I make myself a bulletproof coffee, I grab my scriptures, and I spend a good hour in the scriptures. And then I get on my knees and pray for the day. Then I hop on my accountability call with my team. Sometimes I do my business reading before that. Sometimes I do it after that. It just depends on the day and how lost I get in the scriptures.
What's your biggest strength?
I would say that I'm very authentic and see-through.
How about your weakness?
My weakness is that I want to do too many things at once.
That's right. That's it. That's a tough one.
Yes.
Okay, so, and this is the coup de grace. So this is the big question, okay? So this is the one that you're really going to, and you know what? You've already answered this question. You've already answered this question because you did this at the age of
18.
17 and 18. Yes, you did this already. So you wake up in an alternate universe. Everything that you had is gone. Okay, everything you had, things look familiar, but there's nothing there, right? You have a wallet, you have $500 cash, you have a smartphone, which you didn't have at that age, right? But you have a smartphone now, okay, in your front pocket. Everything is modern, it's just like a little mini laptop. No names, no contacts. What do you do?
Well, this is so easy to answer because I literally lived through that. I mean, it's like going back 20 years and waking up in Standish, Maine, living in a little apartment. My husband was working, 2-3 jobs. I was home, 18 years old, didn't know anyone. I was deprived of being social because I'm such a social butterfly. Lived out in the woods, no car, no license. And I remember going to the grocery store and I needed whipping cream. And I had no clue what it was in English. And I remember trying to explain it to the associate. And I broke down crying because I couldn't figure out what whipping cream was. Liquid, not whipped, because I wanted to bake. And I remember in that moment I made a decision that moment. I will never be afraid of asking questions. And I will never be afraid of asking for help. Because pride will keep you from that. People think it's fear, and I think it's really a feeling of the unknown that's holding people back. And so I just decided I'm going to look people in the eye. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to, work myself through learning this language. but I will never be afraid to ask a question, and I will never be afraid to ask for help. So if I woke up in a new universe today, the first thing I would do, I would look for the next human. I would introduce myself. I would say I'm absolutely new in this environment. I need to find my way. And I would just try to get 5 minutes of conversation in to see where I'm at and what my next steps are. And I would go to the next person. I would do the same exact thing. Look them in the eye, introduce myself, and ask a few questions. And by that, I'm pretty sure I would be on my way.
Amazing. And it's funny how you revert back to building a network, right? Because ultimately, and I've said this 1,000 times on the show, folks, ultimately, your net worth is your network. You know, if you're afraid to talk to people and build a relationship, then this industry just may not be for you. Simple as that. If this, you know, Irma said it very eloquently for us today. She said that you can't be afraid of just, you know, doing things, right? You can't be your own hurdle. You can't do that. It doesn't work for you. If you are tied to the need to have somebody's approval, if you're tied to the need to have recognition from somebody, right, other than from yourself, from your spirit, right, you're done. You're done. It's a done deal.
One of the biggest things I will tell you is this, and that's probably another big lesson to learn, especially in network marketing, is learning how to take an eraser and literally erase yourself out of the equation. The minute you do that, the minute you erase yourself, what you're doing is you're erasing fear and self-doubt and possible judgment, all of that. You just decide to just bundle it up and just get rid of it. And now the next thing that you see is literally the person and the potential opportunity. And your job, the only job you have, is to connect the two. The minute you put yourself in the equation, now you've got all this mumbo jumbo in your brain and the self-doubt and this fear and all this stuff. And now you're actually stopping someone from reaching potential in the opportunity because you're putting yourself, you're elevating yourself versus really taking yourself out and saying, you know what, my job, my only job is to connect the person to this opportunity. And it's not up to me to judge, prejudge, or to have my feelings in this equation because I've already been helped. Someone shared with me. Now it's my job to pass it on. The minute you do that mentally, it's amazing what happens.
It's so simple that it's complicated. All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, Irma Maspen, she's an amazing guest. I'm very blessed to have her. Actually, I'm blessed, fortunate, and highly favored to have her on my show today. So thank you so much for being on.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for listening to Socrates Zayas on SocTalks. Please visit us at SocTalks.com for a chance to win a $50 gift card. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Give us a great review and Socrates will give you a personal shout out on the very next show.